And finally, combining. Oh my God. Hey everyone, I'm Abby Sharp. Welcome to Abby's Kitchen. I get so many suggestions from all of you about things you want me to talk about on my channel, but nothing has compared to the number of requests I have received to talk about food combining, particularly about this kind of Kenzie Burke woman and her perspective on food combining. So I did touch on the idea very briefly a couple weeks back when I was reviewing Kate Flowers' video, so you can check that out right here. But of course, I want to do the diet real justice and do a deep dive for all of you guys so you can get the full idea. So first of all, I want to talk about what is food combining. Well, basically, it's a set of rules that suggest that you should eat some foods together and some foods separately. It's actually not like a new thing. I remember hearing about it before I even became a dietitian. It actually has roots in Ayurvedic medicine. However, of course, these things have a way of making their rounds, and we are seeing it come back into kind of vogue and popularity thanks to people like Kenzie Burke. So here are the basic rules. Only eat fruit on an empty stomach. Don't combine starches and proteins. Don't combine starches with acidic foods. Don't combine different types of protein. Only consume dairy products on an empty stomach, especially milk. Protein should not be mixed with fat. Sugar should only be eaten alone. Fruits and vegetables should be eaten separately. I don't know about you guys, but when I read a list like that, I feel a combination of exhaustion, anger, and a little bit of hunger. But of course, it's time for me to put my big girl pants on and get down to the science. Okay, so the theory behind combining or food combining is that when you eat fast digesting foods like fruit and slow digesting foods like protein at the same time, it creates some kind of like traffic jam in your gut, and that apparently can create digestive distress and disease and toxic mother buildup. So that's what Kenzie says, and we're going to hear a little bit more about Kenzie's philosophy, and then I'll talk a little bit about the science. So let's do this.
Salad with chicken on it for lunch, and then you have a sweet tooth, so you want to have some fruit, which is great. Fruit is great, and I'm a big fruit person, but it's just a matter of how you eat your fruit. So, you know, you're on this one-way street, right, and you have your chicken right here, and it's stopped at the stop sign on the one-way street. And then you try to put fruit on top of that, but there's nowhere to go. Okay, it's a one-way street. They can't go around the car, they're stuck. So the fruit is essentially stuck on top of the chicken. Fruit digests in 30 minutes, so it's wanting to digest. It's like trying to break down, but it can't because it has nowhere to go. And also, think about how like hot it is inside of your body. We have a lot of...
Okay, so I think Kenzie needs an anatomy class, and I'm going to try to do my best to like break it down. So what I am envisioning when I hear Kenzie talk about her vision of digestion, I think of like a snake. When a snake eats like an apple and it's like a whole apple and it just like goes into its belly and it's like bulging and it's stuck there, and of course like nothing else can get past. I don't know if that's actually true because I'm a dietitian and I'm not like a reptile nutritionist, but that's what it sounds like Kenzie is suggesting is happening here. But the reality is our stomach doesn't contain its contents like a perfect Pinterest parfait. I mean, it's more like a smoothie by the time it gets to our gut and is ready to be digested and absorbed. So let's talk about that digestion for a sec. Okay, so the first step of digestion happens in our mouth. We chew our food, so it's masticated up into smaller pieces, and then the enzymes get to work starting to break them down. So amylase works on the carbohydrates we are eating, and lipase works on the fats. When the bolus, or the food ball, I guess you could say, enters our stomach, gastric acid is released, as is more enzymes to keep the digestion flowing. So we see lipase again for fat, pepsin for protein, and amylase for carbs. So let's stick with Kenzie's analogy of the kind of like one-way street, because it's a hell of a lot more pleasant than the snake imagery I've got going on here. But the reality is our digestive system is not a one-way street. It's more like a 6-lane highway. And when we eat something, the food finds a lane, and then our body sends out messages to get the enzymes, the appropriate enzymes needed to help break it down. And all of these things are happening simultaneously. It's not like one food is being broken down at once. On top of that, there's no such thing as foods only consisting of one food group. So these food rules seem really arbitrary at best and really faulty and problematic at worst. I mean, all whole foods contain a variety of food components like fat, carbs, and protein. And it's our body's job to be equipped with the right enzymes and variety of enzymes to help break those foods down for digestion and absorption. For example, fruits and vegetables contain carbs, we know that, but a lot of them also contain small amounts of protein and fat. Animal foods like meats, for example, often contain protein but also fat. It's very hard to find proteins that are devoid of fat. At the same time, we see things like grains. Grains are a really great source of carbohydrates, but also protein and sometimes even fat as well. So it only makes sense that our body's equipped to be able to handle whatever cocktail of things we put into it.
And to try to digest all of that at once. So the whole thing with food combining is you're optimizing your digestion and you're optimizing your energy. So our digestive systems use the most energy out of any single part in our body. Uses 80 to 90% of our energy.
I tried to fact check that as best as I could, and I could not find any sources that suggest that we use 80 to 90% of our entire energy to digest food. The best number I was able to find was 10%, which honestly makes a lot more sense. I feel like if we were using 80 to 90% of our energy just to digest food, we would need a hell of a lot more energy. So just wanted to make that clear.
So if you eat in a way where you're freeing some of that energy up and your food can just go right through you, you are freeing up energy within your body to do other things, like to rebuild your skin's collagen, to shed off weight easily and permanently. Energy.
Okay, so I just want to clear that piece up as well, because I don't really buy into this idea that we want food to go through us quickly. I think that's so weird. I mean, do you like diarrhea? I don't like diarrhea. It's never been part of, one of my top favorite pastimes. But the reality is we actually want food to go through our digestive tract slower, because that means more satiety. When you eat something and then you're starving again in half an hour, it usually means that those kinds of foods are not very satiating, and it's going to potentially lead to overeating. It spikes your blood sugar and then crashes you right back down. Slow digesting foods also help us normalize our blood sugar levels. So for example, if you just have like a piece of candy, for example, which is just straight up carbohydrates, straight up simple sugars without any fiber, protein, or fats to slow it down, we see a spike in our blood sugar and then a crash shortly after, and we're hungry again, right? So that is why I actually recommend food combining, and I'll talk more about this in a bit, where we want to combine a source of carbohydrates with our protein, fiber, or fat. So some kind of discrepancies in philosophy going on here. But I guess Kenzie's really much more concerned about the collagen and permanent weight loss, which is, it doesn't make sense. Okay. I also want to talk about thermogenesis. So thermogenesis is the process where our body creates heat as a byproduct of breaking down and digesting and absorbing food. So this is where the idea of kind of like burning calories comes from, because calorie is just a measure of heat. So some foods actually have a higher thermogenic rate because it takes our body more energy to help break it down and absorb it, which is actually thought of as kind of a good thing because it means a slight boost in our metabolic rate. It's just kind of strange to me that Kenzie sees all those kinds of things, the heat generation, as being problematic, when really the science tells us otherwise.
Like eaten lunch and then just felt sluggish after. Well, that is like a big bonus about food combining is I eat all day long and I feel super light and energized throughout the whole day. And I also eat good portioned meals. Like I don't restrict myself in any way, and I go to bed with a flat stomach and I feel amazing. And I know that I'm just getting all the nutrients from my food.
So there's a lot to unpack there, but first of all, let me just talk about some of the benefits that she just noted. Light, energized, flat stomach, feeling amazing. None of those things have to do with food combining. For the energized thing, for example, this has nothing to do with the fact that, maybe you are eating avocados separate from your egg, for example. This has probably a lot more to do with the fact that she might be staying hydrated, not overeating high calorie, high fat foods, spreading her calories out throughout the day and not skipping meals and then getting ravenous and eating a huge meal before dinner, focusing on stress, physical activity, and of course sleep. All of those things are way, way better predictors of feeling energized than combining certain foods or separating certain foods in your day. I think it's easy for a YouTuber to pinpoint a very specific element in their diet as the reason for their health. However, the evidence really does suggest otherwise, that all of these other things that she's likely also doing are much better predictors. And I haven't even touched on things like the social determinants of health, which we know are the biggest predictors of overall well-being.
After you eat all day, you go to bed bloated, right? I thought that was standard. I started to go to bed with the most toned stomach I have ever seen on my own body. Like, my entire body transformed, and I immediately started to notice changes within my body. And 4 weeks into it, I also was working out throughout this whole thing, and I'd also been very health conscious, but with
Honestly, Kenzie, my thinking here is that the reason for your flat stomach is largely genetic and the fact that you've never housed a human in there, but also you pointed out yourself that you were exercising a lot and paying attention to what you eat, whatever that means. So those are probably much bigger predictors than this food combining magic and mama juju. But of course, I want to talk a bit about the science behind bloating so that you guys have a little bit more context. So one of the claims of food combining is that the fast digesting foods and slow digesting foods are digesting at different rates, and the slow digesting foods end up sitting in your gut and rotting, which causes bloating. The reality is, foods don't just sit around untouched in your stomach for long periods of time, or any periods of time. Our stomach is incredibly acidic, and our body will start to very quickly break down anything that's in there. As for your intestines, this makes a little bit more sense because our large intestine houses a wide variety of good bacteria, and foods that we don't break down, for example, like fiber, ferment there and cause gas. So, for example, that's why you get gas when you eat a lot of cabbage or a lot of broccoli or cauliflower, raw vegetables, for example. But that's actually not all bad. The byproduct of this process is things like short-chain fatty acids, which we know are really good for blood sugar control, reducing the risk of disease and inflammation. Some other likely reasons why you might be experiencing bloating are things like legitimate food intolerances or eating too fast or too much, especially foods that are high in fat or high salt or high calorie, some of those sulfurous vegetables that we just talked about that ferment in the gut, or sugar-free foods that also can ferment in the gut, as well as just hormones during that time of the month. In fact, if you're suffering from chronic bloating, it could be a symptom of something more serious. So always speak to a registered dietitian or doctor if this sounds like you, before your symptoms get exacerbated by something like food combining.
Second breakfast, and then you get to lunch. Are you going to have a protein, or are you going to have a starch at lunch? From there, so you just pick one. It doesn't have to be a super overwhelming thing. You pick one, and then from there, you pick your vegetables. So I always say half or more than half of your plate should be vegetables. Vegetables optimize digestion. Vegetables are amazing for you. Vegetables are your best friend. They are a neutral food. They can digest with anything. Like leafy greens can digest with anything. They even digest with fruit. So
the rules, before we couldn't eat vegetables and fruit, and now leafy greens are neutral, they're magic. So I agree with Kenzie here that I also like to try to fill half my plate with vegetables. Vegetables are amazing, vegetables are magic, vegetables are great for digestion. Yes, we agree on this one point, Kenzie. However, I want to talk about this whole idea of vegetables being neutral. Aside from the kind of moral language that is associated with that, what I think she's getting at is that in the food combining world, foods can either be acidic, alkaline, or neutral. And eating the wrong foods can apparently alter your pH, which of course can disrupt your digestion. Yes, our enzymes need an optimal pH to function. However, there's no evidence to suggest that eating specific alkaline or acidic or neutral foods can have a significant impact on our digestive tract's pH. And even if it could change things, your body would find a way to correct it. So here's how. Your stomach lining contains cells that help to regulate its pH level. If pH was to change, then your body would secrete more gastric acid to bring it back into line. The same kind of thing happens in your intestines, which are more alkaline. Basically, if it got too acidic in there, then your pancreas would secrete bicarbonate acid to neutralize the gastric acid coming from the stomach. Either way, your pH levels are tightly controlled and regulated by your body and not the food you eat. Thank you, next.
I was an apple and almond butter person. I had it all the time. It was my thing, like sometimes even twice a day. That was my go-to snack. Cutting out apple and almond butter together alone, like those two together, completely changed my life. Like, I was bloated after I had apple and almond butter every single time. I didn't know why. I thought it was healthy. They're two whole foods. Like, why wouldn't that work? But it was because the almonds take way longer to digest than the apples. Use energy to try to break that down, and I was causing bloat. I swear I don't like to talk about weight, but I lost weight when I started food combining, and I swear the apple and almond butter was such a big thing. Tiniest shifts that make the biggest difference.
I can't help but I'm trying not to poke fun at this, but honestly, it's funny how much she's harping on apple and almond butter, but also this diet just sounds so delusional. I mean, I don't know if she ever plays back this video and listens to some of these statements, but if I were to do that, I would hope that I would see some issue here. But I want to talk about food combining in the context of weight loss, because I understand from a lot of your messages that this is really where your interest lies. So basically, to date, I was only able to find one study on food combining and weight loss. And basically what they did was they divvied up the participants into one group that was put on a food combining diet and another group that was put on a balanced food diet. Both groups were only allowed to eat 1,100 calories, which in my books is starvation, and I'm surprised it even made it past ethics. However, not surprisingly, considering how low calorie this diet was, both groups lost weight, and the conclusion was that food combining offered no benefits compared to a general balanced diet. And of course, this is a short-term study, as they all are, but I would be really surprised if anyone was able to maintain that weight loss. 95% of people gain back the weight that they lose on diets, and usually then even more so. So I say, do not try this shit at home.
I was really struggling about 2 years ago. I got really into working out. I was obsessed with it, and I'm a very obsessive person, so I couldn't just stop with the working out. It was like I needed more and I wanted more. So I got really interested in the foods I ate, and then I got also kind of obsessive with how I looked. And a lot of that had to do with social media. It was like I always saw these models, I always saw these fitness influencers, and I would see them posting like burgers and french fries, and it just didn't add up to me. I could not understand, like, how do they do that? And I also didn't feel like I could find the truth. Like, I would find someone and I would think, okay, I'm gonna try this system. And for it to not work for me, and to come to find that maybe they were restricting more than what they had posted, and I just felt super, super frustrated.
So I just want to flag this little testimonial and confessional in the middle of Kenzie's video here, because when I hear this, I honestly hear my former self when I was really in the throes of disordered eating and orthorexia. And I'm not Kenzie's doctor, so this is by no means, me trying to diagnose anything, but this sounds very much like disordered eating disguised by wellness culture and a quest for better health. This is the lure of orthorexia. This is why it's so easy to fall victim, to fall into this trap, because it's all, not done out of vanity, it's for health. So there's this allure of, self-care, but really any obsession with wellness is problematic. And this is her language, obsession. That's the word that she used. She talked about being constantly obsessed. And the term obsession or obsessed is inherent and part of the definition of orthorexia.
But I had signed up for the Institute of Integrative Nutrition. I am a certified health coach, and I created the 21 Days to Your Best Body. Stories that I receive of other girls that have done this reset that have had severe bloating, they never thought there was a cure. Within 3 days of doing food combining and eating plant-based foods, everything was transformed for them. And it's really good to get in tune with your body. Health is a ripple effect. I'm here to get you started. I'm here to provide you inspiration. I'm here to provide you information. But once you start to feel good, you will be hungry for more and you will evolve.
And here's the sales pitch. So Kenzie is talking about how she's now a certified health coach. And these health coaching programs, the qualifications and schooling required can range from anywhere between like a few weeks, like an online program, to maybe like a year. When I looked deeper at her credentials, I found that it does not require a kind of license the same way that being a registered dietitian would. So she's free to give nutrition advice as long as she doesn't call herself a registered dietitian. So the reason behind not needing a license is that they're not seen as being a public health concern. However, I would say that prescribing certain diets or lifestyles on a large platform to a large audience like YouTube and pushing a 21-day body reset program is definitely harming to the public and a public health concern. The other problem is that a lot of people don't realize and understand the difference between a registered dietitian or a nutritionist and a health coach. And for that reason, people don't really realize how much or how little education and training and expertise their so-called expert has. And of course, she has a program that she's pushing. Not surprised.
And to share this lifestyle, if you're looking for a way to get started, you should do my 21-day reset. I have all the information you could ever need about food combining on my page, and I don't have lengthy information on it because I don't want to overwhelm anyone.
No shit, there's no lengthy information. And it's not because she doesn't want to overwhelm anyone. It's because she wants to deceive everyone, because there is no lengthy information. I have given you all the information, the legitimate information right here. So now let's flip the switch and talk about some situations where food combining could actually be beneficial. So first of all, combining iron-rich foods with vitamin C-rich foods. So there are two types of iron: heme iron found in animal products and non-heme iron found in plant-based products. And non-heme iron is not absorbed as readily and effectively or efficiently as heme iron. So one way to increase the absorption is to pair it with a vitamin C-rich food. So that's why we recommend combining things like beans and lentils and legumes with things like tomatoes or bell peppers or citrus fruits. This would be really important information for Kenzie to share with her plant-based friends and followers. However, this would be prohibited by the standards of the food combining gods. Number two, fat-soluble vitamins with a source of fat. So your fat-soluble vitamins like vitamin A, D, E, and K are best absorbed with some kind of source of fat. So researchers found that carotenoid-rich fruits and veggies like your orange and red and green vegetables are best with a little bit of oil or fat to increase the absorption. So that's why, for example, we always recommend having full-fat salad dressing on your salad greens. Likewise, it would be really, really important to get some fat with your vitamin A-rich fruit. So for example, pairing mango with cashews or watermelon with avocado. All of those would be really great ways to reap the benefits of your produce. However, of course, that would be outlawed by the food combining rules. So that sucks. And finally, combining carbohydrates with a source of protein or fat. So contrary to the food combining rules, there's actually a lot of benefits to adding some fat or protein in with your carbohydrates at your meals and snacks. So for example, in sports nutrition, we want to pair our carbohydrates with our protein after a workout to help to replenish our glycogen stores and repair those torn, sore muscles. Likewise, blood sugar control is also a really important reason to add a little bit of protein or fat in with our carbohydrates. So one study found that people had much better blood sugar levels after combining some lentils with their potato as opposed to just having the potato all on its own. Alas, none of these things would be allowed if you just followed those stupid food combining rules. All right, folks, real talk, these rules are bogus in my books. However, the reality is, anytime you impose a set of rules on yourself and your eating, you cut out a ton of food. The more rules, the fewer eating options that you have. And at the end of the day, that may just result in you eating less, which may result in weight loss and may also result in less bloating because of just the quantity of foods that you're consuming. It's not about you pairing an apple with a carrot. It's the fact that you're just consuming less food. So yeah, I just want to flag that I get that I'm being a little bit harsh in this video, more so than I have been recently, but it's really because of Kenzie's tone and the fact that Kenzie, very much like Freely, is positioning herself as a kind of health guru and a health coach or wellness health coach. And I find that really problematic because there's a lot of misinformation embedded in her videos and her reset program that she's peddling. So I really do have to call this out. This is not just a YouTuber who's sharing what she eats in a day, saying this is what feels good for me. She is pushing and marketing a whole program and herself as an expert who is out there lending expertise and recommendations and prescriptions. So I had to lay down the law on this one a little bit, and yeah, I mean, it is what it is. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to give it the thumbs up. Leave me a comment below about any other diets or people who you'd like me to review. I'd love to see them. We're constantly compiling that list and trying our best to make our way through. Subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to check out my playlist of some other really great What I Eat in a Day YouTuber review videos right here. All right, see you guys next time. Bye.